Hey everybody, this is Perch. Let's talk comic numbers for a little bit. Well, you got a mail here called RDC and Marvel, Their Own Worst Enemies. It says, Esteemed High Perchington. While I realize that the available data is fragmentary at best, and even calling it data may be overly generous, that I would agree, one particular snippet struck me as odd, namely, that a well-known character, such as The Flash, failed to crack the top 200 recently, while no-name books from small publishers made that list. This got me wondering if it may be that to a large extent, DC and Marvel may be losing the market competition to their own back catalog, with the audience segment interested in superhero stories being more interested in prior runs, regardless of subjective assessments of story and art quality, leading to a depression of interest in current comics. I doubt this would account for the entire downswing in comic sales, but I wonder how much of it might impact you might consider this effect to have, and if this may be the root cause of superhero fatigue in movies. Apologies if this is ultimately a different way of phrasing the oft-discussed quality issues. I can answer this without getting into the quality issues. Well, I'm going to talk about the quality of data for a moment, because that's always fun. Look, I think a few things here. First and foremost, it is really important that people understand that the current data that sometimes you see on comic sales numbers is wildly inaccurate. I don't mean this as a personal disrespect to the individuals who carry it and, what's become of ICV2 and the Beat and some of the places that share these numbers, but they're sharing numbers from ComicsHub. ComicsHub is a small, very, very small collection of comic shops that have bought into the ComicsHub system. It's a point of sale system, and basically it logs their orders. So two major problems with the data that comes out of that. Number one, having, a good friend who has ComicsHub in his shop, they do not log everything into ComicsHub, even though they are supposed to. It is kind of an annoyance at times for the staff to do that. So bad data going in means inaccurate data. So that's number one. Number two, the stores that typically use ComicsHub tend to be stores that are a little bit more, specialized or focused on comics. That naturally means they sell more indie comics. It is not an accurate barometer of comic sales. It just isn't. I guess there's 3 points on this one. The third one is some of the larger stores that do use ComicsHub also sometimes buy into incentives. They very intentionally do not put in their large bundle orders or incentive orders into ComicsHub. Doing so would wildly skew the numbers, because you have a big shop, like say a Midtown, that might order 20,000 copies of something. That's an exaggeration for sure. But they might order a large quantity of a comic in order to do signings that they know they're going to do in the shop and other things. They're basically ordering on futures, which is fine. But if you put that into a comics point of sale system that's tracking basically 100 shops, you would skew the numbers all over the place. And so as a result, things like that tend to get counted differently. All that said, ComicsHub is a perfectly fine piece of software. There's nothing wrong with it. It helps shops organize that have it. But using it as a barometer of comic sales as opposed to Penguin Random House numbers, which aren't publicly shared, you aren't looking at real data. And I know a bunch of, and trust me, as a person who's done, you don't have to trust me or whatever, but I've done a lot of comic sales analysis. I've done comic sales numbers. I've done the charts for you. You could see those videos in the playlist. The channels right now that are talking comic numbers they're basically, they're getting it from a source of a source. Basically, there's the reporting of estimates from ComicsHub. Basically, they're taking those numbers and they're saying, okay, given a rough estimate of the market, we're going to assess the comic sales to be somewhere in this range based on what this small sample is telling us. It's a little bit like how they do exit polling in elections. The problem is it would be kind of like if you did exit polling. This would be the analogy I'd use. You're going to do exit polling, but you're only going to talk to what look like wealthy white women. That's it in your polling. You're not going to actually, a bunch of other people are coming out of the election office, but you're not going to talk to any of the rest of them. You're only going to talk to women who look like they've got, they've got a nice Coach bag and Chanel, and they're working at that. That's the only people we're going to talk to. I mean, because as you do. Um, so as a result, you would get very skewed information, skewed data. That is what you're getting. So I mean, I just would temper that. There's channels that are using this as gospel right now, and they're taking basically somebody's estimate from another site that is an estimate. First of all, the data is estimated, and then they're doing an estimation on top of that. And frankly, there's a couple of individuals in the mix here. I don't entirely trust that that data that they're assessing. They're not moving some things around for various reasons. And then you've got channels trying to interpret that. It's just that it's not accurate. It is not. And again, I go back to the common sense point of look, the average comic shop, the just general comic shop that sits somewhere that maybe has games and has other things, which is the bulk of them, are going to sell more mainstream comics. Their audience is a little bit more casual. The very specialized shop is going to be more into indies. The specialized shop is using, Comic Hub. Therefore, the indie books are going to look higher on the charts than they actually are. A very well-known indie creator and I were talking about this and commenting that, like, I wish my numbers were, what's being reported, but they were saying that what was being reported on ICV2 was more than double what was actually sold because his estimation was so poor. So just take that for what it's worth. But you also bring up a good point. So putting that aside, is there an issue with superhero comics ultimately selling less beyond just the price and distribution, all the things we've talked about a million times before? Is there an issue where basically they're in competition with themselves? Where as a new comic, you're in competition with your past runs? And the answer is undoubtedly yes. I do think it has an impact. And it has an impact on two forms. One, in modern times today, whether a comic is good or not, you're going to notice I'm not going to talk quality, but a lot of these comics are doing short runs. They're doing kind of one and done gimmicks. They're doing constant reboots. There's a lot of jumping around. You don't have good classic sit down and read 20, 30 comics runs as much anymore. It's a rarity. It happens. It's happening on the Philip Kennedy Johnson is doing that on the Hulk right now. But even that for his run, he's built to a place where now they're relaunching the title and he's continuing the next chapter of his run. And I'm glad he's continuing it. I wish they weren't relaunching it because they will get a bump from the new #1 issue and the variants and everything else they do, but there will be attrition. There will be people who will hop off at that point and they will lose those readers. So I wish they weren't doing it. It's not healthy for comics. Just full stop. But anyway, um, what's happening is basically you have shorter runs, you have stories that are less substantial, and I don't mean that again from a quality perspective. I mean that from a sheer volume perspective. And simultaneously, you have better, easier access to back issues. One of the things that was frankly fun in the 80s and the 90s, although fun may be in the eye of the beholder, but fun was that you could, basically, if you wanted to read a particular run in comics, there likely wasn't a trade paperback available for you. There weren't, ready-made omnibuses to go read this stuff. And you didn't have the internet to, look this stuff online with scans. So therefore, you went on a back issue hunt and you would go to various comic shops. And I remember taking a trip to New York as a kid and, calling ahead, the old rotary phone, calling at comic shops, annoying the shit out of the owner there. It's asking, do you have a particular back issue? Poor guy's like wandering into the shop and like digging through his, crusty old long box there and find the back issue. And then making it a point to go to that shop when I visited New York in order to pick up the back issue so I could complete my run. Yeah, for collecting, but also just to read the story. But what I just described was time consuming. It was long. You had to be committed to do it. Today, if you're coming in and you're like, I want to read some Flash comics, are you going to start with the current issue? Or are you just going to go to a Barnes & Noble or an Amazon or something like that and say, hey, this trade paperback is highly rated from a run, who knows, sometime in the last 30 years. But it's got 5-star reviews and it looks to be, and the quote on it says one of the most influential, best runs in the in Flash history. It's like, are you going to read the current issue or are you going to read that? And you could have that, by the way, at your door in 24 hours sometimes through Prime, and you're reading and you're going. Or, if you're, going online, well, I mean, I'm not even going to get into the online piracy because nobody's making any money. I mean, the the sites are making money through ads, but the comic publisher is making money, and it's hard to tell exactly what's getting read there. But yeah, I mean, if this is, I think, a problem that the mainstream big two have, in that they are in competition with their own back catalog, because it just makes logical sense that you would start to, dig into that for your stories. If you want to read a big substantial, Flash run, or you want to read some Flash comics, why would you go to the store, pick up whatever the current issue is, 22 pages? You might be anywhere in the run. You might be in the middle of a run. You might be at the start. I mean, you have no idea. Or you just go grab, the best of, basically, the greatest hits. It's really no different. I'll pull this analogy for you than if you, or you, put it this way. I don't know if you know this term, but there used to be something called the B-side of an album. And basically the hits were on the A side, the B side were some of the other tracks that are lesser known from a band. Well, popular artists still put out, full albums of songs when they release an album, even though, most of it, the vast majority of it is digital at the moment in terms of how it's distributed and how it's consumed. Most people are listening to the top 4 songs. They're not listening to the other 10. Why would you? You're going directly to the greatest hits, and that's what you're consuming. You have to really, really love the artist in order to go through the entire thing. To some extent, that's a little bit of what's happening with superheroes. People are going to the greatest hits. They're not bothering with some of the in-between stuff and the modern stuff. Unless, of course, the modern stuff starts to get the perception that it's an epic run. Kind of like Al Ewing's Immortal Hulk did. That got to be must-read comics over time. And in the sales charts, when you look at actual sales charts, that's where you see the numbers start to bend back upward. Instead of, attrition going down, it starts to actually go back up. And that's when the title has buzz and it's starting to pick up new readers because people don't want to be left out. But very few comics have that effect. And given that superhero books have such a massive back catalog to choose from, I mean, you've got a wealth of riches to some extent. Like if you're interested in reading the Fantastic Four, you've got at least 4 major epic runs, like big runs, not 10 issues, but 40 more of comics that you can read by, great creators and people who are the best of the best. Or you can read, the current issue, which may have a fill-in artist, may have, you have no idea where it is. So I do think that is a big impact that Marvel and DC are facing right now. How do they compete with that? I mean, they just make your current run best read. It's that simple or that hard. And that's, that's just what it is. But I think you make a good point because you hear people talking about superhero fatigue and they're tired of woke Disney, woke Marvel, woke DC, woke. They're tired of all that. But to some extent, they're losing current readers, current customers to themselves because people are just going for the greatest hits. You're going to go for the B side of Guns N' Roses, or are you going to go for Paradise City? I mean, I love Guns N' Roses, so I'd go for all of it, but there you go. I Used to Love Her is not as popular as Welcome to the Jungle. Say lovey. Anyway, thanks for listening.